How about why does she dress like she's
Why is she dressed like she's going to a business meeting? He dresses like he's going to the gym.
Let me make one thing clear to our YouTube viewers. I am never, ever going to the gym. So I'm working from home. Big difference. Just wanted to make that clear. But anyway, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
We are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. Today, just like not going to the gym might be my brand, we are talking about an author's brand. So the question of brand actually came up at BookEnds recently, and it comes up very frequently, especially with our clients, prospective clients. An author might not know how to develop their own brand or distinguish their own brand or find out what their brand is.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about what we see make up author brands all over, how you can sort of combine them and how you can think about and approach them.
And I want to say for our viewers who are the beginning stages of their career, querying maybe first book or two or three, you may not know your brand yet. You are still figuring it out and developing it. But as you become published and have continued success as a published author, it's really important to begin to have an understanding of what that brand is and lean into it. And the truth is we do it as agents, not just within BookEnds as an agency, but as individual agents. We all have our own brand. I think anybody professionally doing anything, whether you're in finance or you own a restaurant or you own a bookstore, even bookstores have a brand beyond just selling books. Each bookstore tends to have its own brand. So you as an author also need to embrace your brand, because leaning into it and embracing it is what's going to make you even more successful. Wow, that was a bit of a rant. Sorry about that.
No, sure. You just kind of summed up the whole video. Should we even... Well, there are a number of things for an author specifically that can go into developing that brand. So we wanted to talk a little bit. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, but we got about 5 of them. Okay, so the most obvious one, I think, and you know what? Actually, I'm going to switch our list around. Okay. The 2 most obvious ones, I'm going to start with age. The age of the reader that you're writing for. And I think that is perhaps where you should start, right? Like, obviously, are you writing for adults? Are you writing for teens in the YA space? Are you writing for middle grade or younger, picture books, board books, what have you? I think, obviously, the age range that you're writing for is the most important thing because it dictates everything else that comes into a brand.
Yeah, and I want to sort of expand on this because I think we see a lot of people who say, well, I want to write for everybody. But part of your brand is that you have a voice and a style that tends to fit well for a particular age range. And I'm going to keep using us as comparisons. We do this as agents too, right? We have agents here whose style of agenting, their expertise tends to fit in a particular age range. We have BookEnds Juniors agents who work specifically on junior. We have agents who work specifically on adult. And we do have some crossover, but it tends to be very brand specific in those crossovers.
Except for me, right? Then I'm doing picture books and murder. But
it is on brand for you, to be honest.
Sure. I don't know what that says about me. But I think too, like you said, there are definitely authors that are doing across age ranges and doing books in different age ranges, but parts of their brand are carrying over throughout those. So another part could be your genre, which is, again, probably the most obvious. It's a great place to start. What are you writing? Are you writing mystery? Are you writing fantasy? A good example of doing that crossover is Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab, writes fantasy. And she writes fantasy for middle grade, YA, and adult. And all of her books have that same sort of like world building style, I would say. Mm-hmm. So that's a great example of doing different age ranges, but still having a very distinguished brand.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think what happens too is a lot of authors like to fight the brand of genre because they fear being pigeonholed. Well, if I claim that historical mysteries are my brand and that's all I can write. But that's not true at all. I think that in V.E. Schwab's case, the genre that is their brand is fantasy. It's just that they've managed to broaden it out. I think that if you look at, I use Nora Roberts. Nora Roberts has a romance brand, right? Nora Roberts has two brands. Nora Roberts also writes as JD Robb, which is another brand for her. But if you are a fan and read both, you'll see that her brand, she's on brand with both. She is writing romance. There is a solid romance among both her names, among both her brands that's consistent. The truth is that almost every author enters the world of publishing and wants to write everything. And so they're almost fighting having a brand for fear that they'll be pigeonholed. But I think leaning into that in the way, I'm going to use Victoria Schwab again, and expanding your brand instead of fighting it is where your success lies. So trying to chase a market trend and say, I've done really well with super dark suspense and I do dark well. I'm on brand for dark. And then trying to write a rom-com, I'll be honest, you probably are going to struggle to do it and have the same success, because the reason dark has become your brand is because you're damn good at it. So embrace it.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything on that?
No, but I think that helps us get a bit more specific too, because it's not just your age range and genre that are making up your brand. Because as you get more specific to your actual book, there are three in particular things that are, like Jessica's saying, making your writing and your books yours, and specifically yours. We always say that, you know, if Jessica had the same idea as me and we both wrote that book, they're going to be two very different books, because we each have our own way of writing. And I think that way of writing and what we incorporate in our lens and our perspective is part of our brand. So perhaps most obvious is just the themes that you decide to include, right?
Yeah.
So like, are you including consistent themes of family? Is there a theme of grief or a theme of environmentalism? There are different, I have a client who writes really beautiful upmarket fiction. All of her upmarket fiction is rooted so deeply in the natural world. There's a ton of animals present. You know, climate change is really a key factor in every book that she writes. So that's sort of her brand. She writes, she has beautiful language, upmarket fiction, these sprawling stories that have this central theme of environmentalism. And that can really shine through so many, like one theme can shine through so many different types of stories, so many different genres and books and age ranges, but that theme could be a central part of your brand.
Yep.
Another is your style. There's a, you know, everybody has a style of storytelling and plotting. You know, there are psychological thriller authors who have those really big gasp twists. There are those authors that don't, and they have something that, I think of Tana French, right? Tana French doesn't have like these shocking plot twists, but she does have like really deep character development and really deep inter-character relationships that make that book shocking in a way when the reveal finally happens. So the way that you're telling the story is distinctively yours.
And know that sometimes the way you're telling the story, which is your brand, can't translate to another genre.
Yeah.
You know, the way, if your brand is the way you tell a suspense, that might be difficult to take to a cozy mystery, just because the format, the style of book doesn't allow for what you're so great at. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I have a client who writes tons of puns, a ton of puns. And, you know, taking puns and putting it in like, I don't know, like serious nonfiction can be difficult. Can be difficult. So, you know, it's sort of knowing what you do well and what that lends itself to that can really help you develop a brand and also grow as a writer, and connect with readers that maybe in a way that you did not think. Like me, I'm a pun. I love puns. Like a good pun. Everybody at BookEnds loves a good pun.
We love puns. We are punny. Oh.
Okay, the last, most specific, again, maybe most obvious. You can tell us what's most obvious, because I think I said every one of these is the most obvious. But your voice, your actual writing, that's the way you write. It's the way you're telling the stories, like in the words. That's, you know, the way you're stringing your words together is distinctly yours. I don't think anybody else will write it the same way. We always talk about voice when we talk about connecting to stories, and I think that's, I don't know. Voice is a hard thing to nail down. I know we've done a video on it, but it's in a way it's everything, and in a way it's this really specific thing.
I think it's at the end of the day, if I fall in love with a book, like it's the book that I want to hug when I'm done reading, so much of that is how that voice came through for me. And that can be really personal to the reader, that connection with that voice. But I think that is what your readers have come to expect and love, probably without even realizing it, because they don't know how to put a word to it.
right.
But that is, it's who you are. It's sort of like anybody who's enjoying watching these videos. You know,
We have a very distinct voice.
we have a very distinct voice. And if you watch other agents or publishing people do YouTubes, they are very different from us. You know, they maybe aren't as funny or ridiculous, but that's who we are, and that's our voice.
Or you're reading tweets, right? Like sometimes I read a tweet without realizing who tweeted it, without seeing the name, and I'm like, that sounds like Jessica. And then I was like, oh, it was Jessica. Like there's just something that's recognizable about the authorship, and I think that's what your voice is. I know we all have a very, even in our tweets, it comes through. Our voice comes through in our tweets.
Totally.
So maybe that's a good way to sort of study it in a way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something you can teach or create. I think it's something you can hone.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's something you can continue to practice until it's polished, but I don't think it's innate. I don't think it's something that but then again, you know, reading is what helps you develop your voice, right? And I think the more you read a certain time, it's heavily influenced.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think voice, like brand, and I think brand, which encompasses all this, but voice as well, are something that you can't always control. Like it is sort of where you were meant to be. And
how you're received.
Yes. And I feel that way when I talk to authors who want to write a little bit of everything because they're just starting their career. They maybe want to do picture books, but they'd like to try their hand at this. And I think that's great, because trying your hand at all of those things that interest you are what help you develop your brand and where you belong and where your voice belongs and what your voice is. And we do the same thing as agents. I would say pretty much every agent, I think, in this business at some point or another samples other things. They're like, I'm going to represent this. Oh, this sounds really interesting. I love reading these kinds of books. I'm going to try to represent that. And then maybe they back off and realize, no, I'm better over here. I belong over here. And I think authors should do the same thing. Explore it all, but then figure out where you belong.
Yeah, for sure. Because it takes that experience to know for sure.
Yeah.
So homework assignment. I think this is a good one. Think of your favorite writer. Presumably your favorite writer might have a couple of books out by now. That's what makes them your favorite. Think of all of their books and try and find the common thread through those books. So I think I mentioned Tana French earlier. Tana French is one of my favorite writers. Her brand is, upmarket, really well-drawn characters, set in Ireland, murder mystery. That's her brand. It's something that every time I open a book, it's sort of what I expect. It's what I know I will get, what I will get well, and what I think of her for. So do that with your favorite writer. I think it'll start to, or your favorite writers, do it a couple times, or do it with that person you follow on Twitter that you've read all of their books. And I think you'll start to see how people are developing their brands, and then you can apply that to yourself.
I'd love to see in the comments the authors people picked and what they think of that person's brand. And I'd like to see if there's any sort of similarities or if people see somebody's brand as different than the way they envision it.
One more tip, because actually we did this when we first started the YouTube channel and Instagram and everything. We picked 3 words. 3 words that we thought would describe, I don't even remember what they were at this point. We should probably pick 3 new ones. But 3 words that they thought described, what we thought described who we were online. And I think you can do the same. 3 words that you think describe you or describe your writing or describe both.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a great way to sort of start dialing in on that. So maybe start with your favorite writer and then pick your 3 words. You've got homework. Let us know in the comments because we want to hear them.
Love it.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. We post videos every Wednesday, and we'll see you back here next time.
Bye.